Okay, boys, let's talk about the top of the Western Conference. A couple weeks ago, we did a middle of the West video, and in that time, the Suns have scored a million points. The Rockets have trailed off a little bit. The Mavs made two moves. The Suns made a move. The Pelicans and Kings remain right there, too. The Warriors are on a run right now. The Lakers have been better. In their last 15 games, they're above 500. So yeah, conference is packed. And the round one matchups are probably going to be pretty nuts. We're going to do the top. No, I'm not going to do a trade deadline, why didn't trades happen video. I don't know. I figure you've already probably seen that enough on the internet. You don't need it from me. Okay, I would like to start with the T-Wolves, who are still fantastic defensively, with my favorite thing that they do on defense being when Rudy will point to someone on the opposing team and be like, hey, Jaden McDaniels, you pick that guy up so I don't have to worry about him out there, and now I can just remain planted in front of the basket. It can be anybody, not just Jaden McDaniels, of course. But if we could talk about the Wolves' offense, which I think is more of the interesting conversation, I mean, we can definitely appreciate their defense. It's been amazing. But as far as, how far can they go, the offense is a little more of a conversation to me. They're 18th in offensive rating on the season. That number does improve when you're talking about just their starting lineup. And it's a thing where, depending on the night you catch them, you might see Edwards and Gobert having great chemistry on the pick and roll. One play that sticks out to me recently was against the Bucks, where just simple Rudy Ant pick and roll. He crosses over to his left, pulls Brook Lopez out of the paint, then he finds Rudy on the roll. We love that. Or you could see last night against the Clippers where Cat has Terrence Mann on him, and so he just immediately relocates to the middle of the floor. Conley finds him because Conley does everything right. And then from there, it's just kind of bully ball, I mean, they had 33 assists against the Clippers last night. However, what you could also see if you took a look at that Bulls game where they collapsed like crazy in the second half and eventually in the overtime, Kobe White also went nuclear and then some from three, which was a big deal. But the Wolves offense had a really tough time down the stretch of that game. The Bulls just turned up the pressure on them. It was more aggressive switching. It was double teaming more often. And you would have these plays where Conley has got two to the ball on him, whether it's Drummond or Vooch or whoever, and then the guy guarding Conley, of course. And I mean, Conley's very smart, but he just can't get through a defense the way that Ant can, right? In that same stretch, Ant had one play where he basically scores on the entire Bulls defense for a three-point play. That's not an exaggeration, right? But then you also had actions where it's two to the ball on Ant, and he's making the swing pass to Conley. But by that time, the Bulls defense is already reset, and Rudy was open on the roll for a second, Now, they still had some great plays. I mean, I'm pretty sure the three that Cat had to tie the game up before they went to OT, it was that Rudy Cat horns action that I love when they do because they can get 7 different things out of that type of play. And that is a bit of a running thing for the rest of the season with the Wolves. Can they get Cat, how many three-pointers do they want Cat shooting? Because this team does need to just get more three-pointers up sometimes. But anyway, it wasn't just the Bulls game recently where the offense was a little suspect. It was also the Magic game where, unfortunately for the Wolves, Jonathan Isaac was playing, and that means he's blocking Cat on a hook shot, or he's getting into a passing lane when Ant is throwing it to Cat. So that was a little bit of it. But also the Magic had a couple plays there again where you just turn up the heat on the Wolves and let's see what happens. They put two to the ball on Edwards, and then it's a matter of, is it the swing pass, which can maybe then lead to something, or is it the direct pass to Rudy on the roll or whatever it is? And I want to be clear. I'm not saying that Ant is the secret way to stop the Wolves is just put two to the ball on Ant. No, he will still make the skip pass to Cat or the skip to Jaden or whoever, or the roll to Rudy. But it's more so when the initial action is taken away from the Wolves, and sometimes they'll run some pin down actions for Ant to catch the ball in the move as well. But whether it's Ant, whether it's Conley getting doubled, whether it's Cat getting doubled sometimes, it's do the Wolves consistently swing the ball enough and do all that to make defenses pay all the time for doing that? And I think the answer is it depends sometimes. And sometimes you're just going to see Ant and Cat just make tough shots. I mean, in that Rockets game they had recently, in the third quarter, Ant has 20-something points, and I mean, not all of them were step-back jumpers, but a good amount of them were. Or it was just him taking his guy one-on-one into a fadeaway around the free throw line. Now, in their last two games, Ant has had 17 assists and 1 turnover, which, I mean, throw a parade if he can keep up that sort of pace throughout the rest of the season. For the sake of simplicity, if you just wanted to look at one thing to see the state of the Wolves offense, you could just look at turnovers. For the season, they are 28th in turnover percentage, as in there are only 2 teams that are worse than them in this regard. Now, if you would prefer turnovers per game as opposed to turnover percentage, well, then they're 26th, which is still not good. Anything else before I go on to OKC? Jaden McDaniels has not had the offensive jump that I thought he was going to. He's still very valuable for them with his defense. Let's not get it twisted, but still. We love Naz Reid's shooting and what he does off the dribble. Monte Morris should help. Kyle Anderson is just having a weird season. The blueprint for the Wolves is be great on defense, and it's going to be a grind on offense with your top 2 dudes having to make some tough shots. And now we get to OKC. And real quick, I would love for an OKC Wolves playoff matchup because I just think there'd be a lot of interesting basketball stuff. I mean, we've already seen the Wolves have Rudy help off of Josh Giddey, and that's been a running thing with the Thunder, and we'll talk about that in a second. But also how the Thunder force a lot of turnovers and a lot of deflections and get a lot of blocks and all that, and how the Wolves would deal with that on offense. Like, I think it'd be really interesting. But anyway, for the Thunder, now similar to the Wolves defense, I don't want to harp too long on the thing that makes all of these teams great. I more so want to get onto the other stuff. But still, let's appreciate SGA, J-Dub, Chet. They're all great, and every game now when I'm watching them, I see J-Dub getting into what feels like one or two more step backs or pull-ups or whatever, and I'm just like, man, like, what the hell is J-Dub's ceiling, dude? This is his second season. He's going to average 20 a game. Yeah, let's talk about how teams are guarding Josh Giddey real quick. So the very large example of it was the recent game against the Wolves where Rudy was helping off of Giddey, and I mean, you don't need me to tell you how much more challenging that makes it to score on offense for you, even with how good SGA is, right? But then we can look at like their recent one against the Mavs, where Dallas was pretty ruthless with, Maxi Kleba helping off of Giddey. Lively was not playing in this one. But then when Gafford came in the game, he would also be helping off of Giddey. And I mean, you've got plays where the paint is just so packed that it's SGA or J-Dub taking a pull-up as opposed to, getting all the way to the rim, which they can make those shots, of course, but still it's going to be a little tougher for him. A couple times where Giddey is left wide open and he's missing a three, or he might make one or two threes, but even so the defense is usually just kind of unrelenting with doing this, right? Now, it doesn't happen every game. Like in their recent Kings win, Harrison Barnes was mostly helping off of Giddey. I mean, it's just different when it's a center doing it versus Harrison Barnes doing it, In the recent Jazz game, it was like John Collins helping off, and then there was like one possession late where Markkanen was helping off of Giddey, and the Jazz brought two to the ball on J-Dub, and then it's a swing to Giddey who misses the three, another one where Giddey tried to attack and he misses like a floater. Of course, the Thunder, they can go to Isaiah Joe, they can go to Cason Wallace. They just got Hayward who can play in those minutes now if defenses are just kind of killing them with the way they don't guard Giddey. They have tried some like Giddey screening on the ball for SGA, which can help. Sometimes the Thunder just play through this, like if Chet and SGA have a really good two-man thing going on, like you can still kind of play through this sometimes, but no, it's definitely going to be something that I think we're going to see a lot in the playoffs. I think teams are also daring Lou Dort to beat him as well, Besides that, if we talk about OKC's defense for a bit, so the beauty of Chet, there's many things about Chet that are great, but one thing is that it does allow OKC, specifically on like pick and roll actions that are going at Chet, to not have to be as aggressive as they had to be last year, right? With this being said, OKC still does up the aggressiveness when they can, and it results in them leading the league in deflections, and they're top of the league in like forced turnovers and steals and blocks and all of this, right? And when it goes well, which is most of the season so far, they just look suffocating defensively. Like in their recent win against the Pelicans where they forced 20 turnovers and they also had, I think, like 5 or 6 blocks on top of that. And I'll just give you one play where it's like Ingram is trying to ISO on, I think it was J-Dub, and then Aaron Wiggins comes over and doubles Brandon Ingram. And so then it's a kick to Dyson Daniels, who now is in a one-on-one situation against Chet, and he drives and he just loses the ball. And I think as that was happening, you had like J-Dub also helping again from the wing, like going from Ingram then to the rim. And then, of course, you have SGA, who's fantastic at getting into these passing lanes, and Cason Wallace, who's tough as hell. And, again, Chet, rim protection, we all understand that one. There are a lot to deal with defensively. The one trade-off to all of this is, they're towards the bottom of the league in defensive rebound percentage. Everybody knows that one. That's what happens when you put a lot of athletes around one big dude in Chet. And they also give up a lot of corner threes. They give up the most corner threes in the league, which again is why I'm so fascinated in a potential Thunder-Wolves matchup, because it's like, with OKC just putting the pressure on the Wolves, and the Wolves already having, at times, problems with that. Sometimes they look great, sometimes they don't. Just what would happen in a playoff matchup like that, And then, of course, just the size difference between the two teams as well. Next up, we're going to go to the Clippers, and I will admit, throughout parts of this run that the Clippers have been on now, which has just been months long at this point, they did just have a rough loss to the Wolves, and also a one not too long ago against the Pelicans as well. But throughout this crazy run they've been on, where Harden has had amazing pick and roll chemistry with Zubats and Tice or Plumlee, who's ever playing, those center minutes for him, Kawhi and PG, especially Kawhi, just making all of the difficult Kawhi mid-range fadeaways and all that he's always made. PG coming across his pin downs and all that. Westbrook being good off the bench for him. They have sprinkled in more Westbrook Harden minutes as the season has gone on. And then defensively, I was watching that Heat game and they were just switching defensively, and Miami just had moments of like, well, we don't really know what to do because they're switching and we don't have any driving lanes. Harden also made a few step back threes on him that were crazy. But I have been like, okay, so what is the potential weakness of this team? Well, of course, there's the health of Kawhi and PG. We all know that. I do think they could have used another forward. I know they got Kawhi and PG. Amir Coffey's good off the bench and all this, but the one more forward I think would have been nice. And I think you saw it a little bit in their last one against the Wolves, where you've got plays where Norm Powell ends up switched onto Cat, and then Cat from there is just going off the dribble, basically. So I don't know. The other potential thing, I guess, in a playoff matchup could just be maybe they get a little too ISO heavy sometimes, but even then, their tough shot making can go just crazy sometimes. Teams will definitely dare Westbrook to beat him from outside in the playoffs. So they're really good, but hey, the West is really good. I mean, there's a decent chance that 3, potentially all 4 of the round 1 matchups are all interesting series in the West. And speaking of the Nuggets, let's do them for the last one here. So because the Nuggets are defending champions, I think it is fair to just say their sense of urgency or whatever is like probably not completely where it should be right now. Let's just call it what it is. Like they'd sometimes just have some weird blowout losses. And with that said, I'm not concerned at all. I think they're still the best team in the West. They might not get the 1 seed. We'll just see how the rest of the year plays out. I would love to see if Nuggets fans have any sort of fear at all, or if they're also just in the state of like, yeah, we're fine. If you wanted to pin it down to just one specific thing, outside of the games where they just lose by like 25 points, it's how do they look in the non-Jokic minutes? If we want to talk about the defense for a little bit, because last year that was my big thing with them, because that was like the long-running conversation was, well, can they be good enough defensively in the playoffs? And my thing was always, well, when they have Jokic at the level of the screen, they look pretty damn good defensively. And my thoughts on that are still kind of similar, because they're just good at all the rotations behind it and stuff. But I don't know, it does feel like it's a little more 50-50 this year. I have no stats to back this up at all. This is just pure eye test, could be dead wrong. It feels like Jokic is more 50-50 drop versus higher up on screens this year. If any of that really matters, I don't know. As far as just their late game execution and all that, like, yeah, there's nobody that I would bank on more to just have an unguardable, like, 3-minute stretch in the fourth quarter than these guys because of the Jokic-Murray 2-man game. And when you think about just other teams guarding them, it's like, well, sure, Zubats is a big dude, and he's probably got a better shot than other centers of it, simply not getting pushed around by Jokic. But that's kind of where it ends. Like, I do not think that Zubats would be able to slow down Jokic on his own, because I don't think anybody can slow down Jokic on their own at this point. The Thunder have beaten the Nuggets 3 times this year. The last one Jokic didn't play, but the other 2. We saw a mix of things. So we saw one game where it was Chet or big Jalen Williams on him, and then from there it's doubling when he gets the ball or when he puts the ball on the floor in the post. But then we saw like another one of them where it was more so big Jalen Williams on him with Chet being the help guy. And we know the Wolves can do that as well. It really just comes down to, like, does any of this actually matter with how good Jokic is, you know? Probably the best team in the league. Like, oh, you want to throw extra attention at us? All right, man, here you go. Here's an open 3 for MPJ or a dunk for Gordon or open KCP shot. You know what it is. And then, of course, there's the you managed to do everything right against the Nuggets and Jamal Murray just made a tough shot on you. I mean, we all get it with Denver, man. Like, they're the favorites. They think that's totally fair. I mean, like, yeah, if they could get the 1 seed instead of, like, the 3 seed, that would be cool for them. Even so, like, yeah, I'm going to pick them to win every series they get.